America.
Conservative isn't just a word. It's a movement, a way of life, a set of values that emphasizes our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Liberty and freedom have to be more than just words.
The Conservative Roundtable discusses the conservative movement at the local, state, and national level. Here's your host, Ralph Lorigo, chairman of the Erie County Conservative Party on 1270 The Patriot.
Good morning, everyone. We have a terrific show for you this morning. First of all, we have a newcomer to politics, Karam Dara, who is someone who was raised here in the Buffalo area, who wants to run for Attorney General. We're going to talk a lot about Letitia James today. And then we're going to, at the noon hour, we're going to have the infamous Roger Stone. That ought to be extremely interesting. I've known Roger now for about 20 years. He's an extremely interesting character. But we're going to start off with our newcomer. So let me introduce you. Let me give you a little background. So Karam Dara, born actually in New York, but raised here in Cheektowaga, Williamsville, Amherst, went to public schools here in the Buffalo area, then went to Columbia Law School. So he's an extremely competent attorney, worked in public policy and regulatory lawyer, and he's totally a newcomer to politics, but he is interested and he wants to run against Letitia James, and I think he's got an extremely good opportunity here. So, Karam, how are you this morning?
Chairman Lorigo, I'm doing great. Congratulations on the show, and thanks for having me on. Sorry I couldn't make it in person. I always love making the trip back to Western New York, but I got into JFK late last night, so didn't want to take a chance being late this morning, so next time.
All right, that'll be fine, and we'll have you on some more. So tell me this: I did some research about you. I see you were actually born in New York in an apartment.
Well, I have to correct you. I was born in Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Houston, but I basically spent my entire childhood in Western New York. Shortly after I was born, my dad got his residency at UB, SUNY Buffalo, UB as we call it in Western New York, and so we hauled up to New York. And yeah, you know, our family cycled through the American dream. We rented an apartment in Cheektowaga, and then we were renting in Williamsville, bought our first house in Amherst and Gettsville. You know, my father went on to have a great career. He's an emergency room physician, now retired. He was chairman of the ER at Sisters of Charity Hospital in Buffalo, and also went on to be the chief medical officer at Now Urgent Care. And my mother, incredible woman, perhaps the most resourceful person I've ever met and known. She was extremely involved in our community, not only raising, while raising me, my brother, and my sister, also serving as Williamsville PTA Council president, very involved in the nonprofit community, franchise business owner. In 2022, she was awarded by the New York Assembly, recognized as a woman of distinction for her efforts in the community. So I've been super blessed to have spent my childhood growing up in Western New York, proud graduate of Williamsville North High School, and I've spent my adult life in New York City. And, you know, it's interesting because I always say I got the best legal education I could have gotten, and I'm not talking about Columbia Law School and working at big law firms. I'm talking about growing up in Western New York, where we have such a rich civic, culture of civic engagement. I got to intern with State Senator Mary Lou Rath as a high school student, knock on doors for Congressman Tom Reynolds, then intern in his D.C. office. And so I was just so blessed and fortunate to have so many opportunities to learn about American law and government and really see how our legal system is supposed to work, and then have had the opportunity in practice to see how it actually works. And it's been quite a jarring experience, to say the least.
So you got your public service from your mother. That's interesting because I got my public service from my mother. She's the one who told us that public service was something everybody was obligated to do and something that, you know, we should look forward to. So your mom was totally involved, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, for both of my parents, I think being involved in our community, being a good neighbor, taking advantage of the fact that we live in a democracy, it was all very important, and I certainly took after them.
So, your parents, were they born here or not?
No, my parents are immigrants from Pakistan. Both my mom and my dad came over individually. My mom came over as a college student. She moved to Houston, and my father came over after medical school. They got married here, had me, my sister, and my younger brother, and we grew up in Western New York, and my family's still there. My dad is a snowbird now, so he's technically a Florida resident, like so many New Yorkers, and I think we're going to talk a lot about the out-migration problem. And so they've been in the U.S. Ever since.
A lot of people don't realize it, but people who come from Pakistan, they're conservative-minded people. You mentioned your parents. A very good friend of mine, Dr. Tariq Malik, I got to know 50 years ago. He was OBGYN. He actually, all three of my children, he was the doctor for all three. And I've known him all these years. And again, a very conservative-minded family. So tell me this.
Absolutely.
You got into, you went to Columbia Law School, and then you became what you call a public policy and regulatory attorney. What does that really mean? What did you do?
Well, it's interesting. I started my career as a corporate lawyer. And so, not a litigator, somebody who was actually working on deals. You're trying to get a deal done, and I've had the opportunity to work with some of the best entrepreneurs, best investors, some of the best companies. But there was so much lawfare, so much regulatory overreach going on that I was spending all of my time working on regulatory issues. And what that means is I was advising companies at a big law firm initially on how to navigate financial regulations. I've worked and spent the majority of my career working with crypto companies. This is a sector that knows all about lawfare. And the interesting thing is, from a regulatory and public policy standpoint, they're not even really asking for special treatment. They're just asking not to be targeted. And this is what I mean when I say, I had the experience of learning and getting an education in how our government and how our law is supposed to work, and then seeing how it works in practice. And it's disappointing to see that in practice, lawfare is so common, and it goes way beyond just going after political opponents. Lawfare is the use of the legal system or the law also to make policy when you lose in the democratic process and you're not able to get what you want done. And so I've seen the consequences of lawfare firsthand. I've been on the receiving end of it. I've seen the cost of it. This is extremely costly, and I think that's something that people don't fully realize. And I think it's crazy in a place like New York what has happened, because New York has such a rich legal history. It's the mecca of lawyers. I mean, you're a New York attorney. I'm a New York attorney. Being a New York attorney means something. Passing the bar in New York means something. New York law means something. Parties from around the world, I don't know if people know this, but parties from around the world will often look to and opt into New York law in part because of the quality and the density of the legal talent. They know if something goes wrong or there's a dispute, they're not going to have a hard time finding a competent quality lawyer that knows what they're doing. And, to think that New York, a state that has some of the best attorneys, not just in the country, but in the entire world, somehow got stuck with the worst attorney general in America, it's just hard to fathom. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not a person who likes to be hyperbolic. I say that because this is a person who ran on lawfare. She ran saying that she was going to use the law as a political weapon, and then when she was in office, that's exactly what she did.
So I want to define.
Trump was out of office, she did it again.
I want to define for our audience that word lawfare, because a lot of people aren't going to understand what that means. But I understand it to mean the strategic use of the legal system to achieve political or ideological objectives, and filing lawsuits to suppress political opponents. Is that your definition?
That's absolutely correct, Ralph. And the way I describe it is it's the use of the law or the legal system as a weapon to make policy or for political aims. And the making policy part of it is the piece that I think people don't fully appreciate. Everybody knows using the law to go after your political opponents is wrong. I mean, that should be disqualifying. But the thing that happens that's a little more subtle is, we have a democratic process. We have elections in this country. And, sometimes Republicans win, sometimes Democrats win. Sometimes progressives get a win, sometimes conservatives get a win. And that's the way our system is set up. Now, what has happened in recent decades is some folks have decided that they don't want to play by those rules anymore. They think the ends justify the means. And so when they lose an election or when they lose a political battle, they decide to use the law as a weapon. And the crazy thing is the lawfare has not stopped. I think what people don't fully appreciate is we just had an election in 2024 where the conservative movement won a mandate. The Republican nominee won the popular vote. Think about that. I mean, that's something that I never expected I would say that at any time. In this part of my life, it just seemed like a very high, steep hill to climb. But we have a mandate for all of these changes at the federal level. We have a mandate for some of these regulatory changes. And what are Democratic state AGs doing? They're obstructing. They're filing lawsuit after lawsuit, and it's being led by New York's Attorney General. While the state has so many issues, so many problems from a law and order perspective, from a public safety perspective, from an economic perspective, the lawfare against business, and to think that we have an AG that is spending her time chasing political dragons and essentially turning the office into a Democratic super PAC, it's just crazy. And I think part of the reason that I decided to make the jump from the private sector and leave my job a couple of months ago to look at this race in 2026 is that when you look at where New York is right now, we are in late stage one-party rule. This is a state that has been run into the ground. We're last in pretty much every category, 50 out of 50 in terms of economic outlook, 50 out of 50 in terms of tax competitiveness. We have the second most regulations of any state. We're the second worst state to do business. All of our cities have serious public safety concerns. So it's not surprising that more people are picking up and leaving our state than literally any other state in the country except maybe one. Every year you're paying more and getting less. It's more expensive and less safe every year in New York. And I think that there's actually a way to make the state more affordable and stop the bleeding. And you don't have to spend any more money. You don't have to create a new program. You just have to end the lawfare. Give people a predictable set of rules. Stop making it up as you go, and you'll see the state grow. And so, the idea that we're going to just keep doing more of the same, I know there's a lot of fresh faces on the far left, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But all of the ideas are very old. It's just more taxes and more spending. If you had a state that was growing like crazy, maybe you do that. Maybe you can get away with it. But in a state like ours, you can't. So to get back to your question, lawfare, we're lawyers. We care about it. I think it's wrong just because it's wrong. But for the folks sitting at home, for the families in New York, for the communities that are struggling, for really anybody across the state, whether you're in Buffalo or in Brooklyn, everybody says the same thing. It's too expensive to live here. You should care about lawfare because there's a cost to it. It's actually making the state more expensive and more difficult to live in.
So when you say, when you're up against the government, obviously, when Tricia James is going after you, you obviously are up against a system that has all the money that it needs to keep on prosecuting you, and people succumb under that, don't they?
If you ask anybody who's been involved in a lawsuit themselves personally or has a close family member who's been involved in litigation, I mean, what's the one thing that they always say, right? The cost.
The cost, right.
The cost, right? And it's more than financial, right? It's your peace of mind. It's so incredibly draining. And we're talking about private litigation, right? We're talking about something that happens. It's a routine thing. It's a fact of life. It's a fact of business. Now, when you think about applying that and taking that to a government office where you're going to say, we're going to use this office to essentially initiate lawsuits as a political weapon, not to enforce the law, but because we want to make policy. I mean, think about the cost and the drain that is on the private sector, on our communities, on individuals. And we've seen so many instances, whether it's, throwing the book at somebody because they happen to be a conservative activist or a member of the Conservative Party, like Jason McGuire.
I want to talk about some of those, but we're going to take a break for a few minutes. But you're exactly on target. The law is an expensive situation, and when you're up against the government, it's almost unbearable. All right, we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. So we've talked about lawfare, what that essentially is, how it's been used by our Attorney General to attack her enemies, to make her public or political stance. This is what she ran on, isn't it? This is what she ran on in 2018, that she was going after Trump. Isn't that what happened?
Absolutely, Ralph. And if you look at that race in 2018, you remember the AG had resigned in disgrace, or this is sort of a common theme in New York. And that was a primary on the Democratic side that had a lot of, from their perspective, some pretty solid candidates. They had Sean Patrick Maloney, who had been in Congress, and Zephyr Teachout, she was kind of the progressive far left candidate or that wing of the party, and you had somebody from the Obama administration. And none of these people were willing to do what Tish James was doing, which was she openly said in her campaign, before even looking at anything, before even looking into any specific matters, that she was going to find something to put on President Trump. This was sort of an unprecedented thing, and then she got elected, and then she did exactly that. And then even when the president left, she just ran the same playbook, and I think it will go down as the greatest political miscalculation in history, which led to the greatest political comeback in history, because she brought this totally novel and very thin case, and it completely backfired. And now she's doing it again in 2026, and it's not just going after your political opponents, it's also trying to make policy through litigation. When you lose in the democratic process, as happened in 2024, she sees her role as being the person that's there to protect the interests of her party nationally, and that's what she's doing. She's uninterested in protecting New Yorkers, and to me, I just think it's disqualifying when you run on lawfare, when you engage in lawfare, and Google Tish James' sword and a shield. She says it every chance she gets. She believes that the law is meant to be used as a sword and a shield, as a political weapon. And I fundamentally reject that. That's just not our system of government. That's not how our law is supposed to work. And even if you don't care about, the sort of philosophical aspect of it, and I don't blame most people for not having time to pay attention. They've got, jobs they've got to work. They've got families they have to raise. They have people they have to take care of in a state that's becoming more and more unaffordable. So they don't have time to follow all of this. But it's my job to make the case to people that there's a cost to all of this lawfare. It's not just declining trust in government. It's an economic cost. It makes it harder to do business here. It drives jobs out of the state. It reduces competition, and that increases prices for everybody. So if you want a way to stop the bleeding, to make New York more affordable again, and incidentally have more resources to put towards public safety, this is a way to do it. And like I said, it doesn't require spending more money, which we don't have, or creating a new program, or enacting a new agenda, as folks in the Democratic Party and the far left want to do.
I mean, she was so far out in the Trump case that even our very, very political Court of Appeals threw out the more than $500 million penalty against Trump.
Absolutely. And think about how many resources were expended for that essentially nil outcome. How many millions of dollars were spent, and think about how those resources could have been better directed elsewhere. And I think this is part of the problem. It's not just that New York is a very serious state. This is one of the most important states in the country. I mean, if New York was its own country, I think it'd be like 10th or 11th largest economy by GDP. This is, I believe, New York is the crown jewel of the United States, and it's unfortunate and just saddening to see what's happened and what's been done to this office, especially when people are struggling so much in the state.
There she went after Trump, and that's certainly her political enemy. But where it affects everybody, where I see it personally, is in the correction officers that she went after. She went after the correction officers for contempt. They actually filed a brief here in Erie County for contempt, and at the beginning of all of this, they were looking for $3.5 million a day from these correction officers and looking to imprison them for up to 6 months. That was her position. I've got that brief that she filed with the local Supreme Court. That's the way they try to handle these things.
I mean, Chairman Lorigo, in all your time in politics, right? I heard, and I want to turn this back to you in a second. I've heard you're possibly the longest-serving chair of a political party in New York State. I mean, is that something you would have ever imagined, or is that something that you could have ever, seen happening, even a decade ago, that the law would be turned against law enforcement, correction officers in this case, like that to make some kind of political point?
I've been doing this. I've been practicing law now. I got admitted February of 1974, so it is over 51 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I mean, Dennis Vacco was our Attorney General. Dennis Vacco is a close friend of mine, was a close friend of mine at the time. There is a night and day difference between those two Attorney Generals. The way Dennis handled that position and the way Tish James handles the position is 180 degrees totally the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was fortunate to get to spend a little bit of time with former Attorney General Vacco over the summer, and he was explaining to me the way in which just the level of partisanship with some of the multi-state litigation, the way that all of this has changed, and the role of the AG has really evolved. I think this is important too. The Attorney General of the state of New York is supposed to be the chief legal officer of the state. It is supposed to be an office that is focused on New York issues, focused on advising the state as to whether their activities are lawful, defending the state in litigation where needed. But of course, in practice, this is an office that has become something much more offensive, something highly political. And I think it's extremely detrimental to the state. And you look back, I mean, Dennis Vacco was the last Republican Attorney General to win, and that was 1994. And so you think, I mean, basically almost my entire life, we've had one-party rule at that office. We've had basically one-party rule across state government for decades now. And this is what happens. Everybody knows it. When there's not competition and there's not accountability, the party in power gets comfortable cutting corners, engaging in lawfare, rigging the election laws so that they never lose, essentially. And you win a lot of battles that way, but you set yourself up terribly for the war, because what has happened now is the Democratic Party in the state is totally lockstep with national Democrats. Their incentive structure is tied to national politics. It's not tied to what's happening here in New York. And I think it's funny that the progressives are trying to take up the affordability issue. I mean, conservatives and Republicans have been talking about affordability in the state for decades. We were the ones that were talking about cutting red tape and making this a better place to do business. We were the ones that were talking about depoliticizing the law and not engaging in ends justify the means politics. And so, you look at the one-party rule, and a lot of folks look at this race and look at statewide races in New York and say, look, it's been a while since we had George Pataki and Dennis Vacco. Is this a race that's really competitive? But I think for so many reasons, it is much more competitive than people think. There have been some election law changes. And you also look at the quality of the candidates at the gubernatorial level on the Republican side that are being discussed in this cycle in 2026. I think that also speaks to the competitive nature of this election in 2026.
I absolutely believe in my heart that in 2026 we are going to change the top of the state around. And having met you and having talked to you a number of times, I'm very hopeful that you can get your case across. That's part of what I want to accomplish today. I want people to know who you are, what you stand for, what your history is. And what you want to accomplish. And we're going to have this continued conversation because I think, You're an excellent individual, and this is exactly what this state needs, is somebody with the kind of roots that you have, the education that you have, and more importantly, the heart, that you want to help, the public service that you want to accomplish, because it's the absolute opposite that we have today. Trish James, in both of her races, ran specifically on this lawfare issue, and I'm sure that is what she will do again in 2026. Although this woman has some problems of her own, isn't that the case right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, the type of behavior that Tish James is engaged in, bringing these novel cases when she herself may have been committing mortgage fraud. I mean, we'll see where the facts land on this case, but it's just exactly the kind of hypocrisy that people that has made the public detest politics so much. And this case, whether it's that case, the mortgage fraud case, whether it's the fact that she openly said she was going to engage in lawfare against a former president, something that had never been done, and I think really. That shifted the window and just it totally changes things when you do something like that. You almost worry that there's permanent damage to trust in government and trust in law. And then on a more basic level, this is a person that seems to have a history of stretching the truth. She's embellished things in her past. She had so many misstatements and essentially lies in her last debate in 2018 that she just refused to debate in 2022 against her opponent. And you're supposed to be the chief legal officer of the state of New York. I just think it's not only unbecoming, it's disqualifying behavior.
I don't think she has the background, the intelligence, to be honest with you. I don't think she has the wherewithal to actually have a debate against someone like you, against someone who knows the issues, against someone who can articulate those issues. What she has is a political sense. That's what she has. And, she won based on that political sense here in New York. But I certainly see the change in New Yorkers. I certainly see that the great majority, at least of the area in New York, isn't looking for this type of attorney general.
Ralph, I think it would be great to have Karam back up here. Karam, this is Bob Davis. I met you at the Chicken Barbecue. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
It's great. It's great to hear you again. Karam was a student at the Williamsville North, right in the town of Amherst, where I'm the Republican chairman. Karam, as you and I talked, I'd love to have you up here this summer. We've got a very competitive race for town supervisor, town board, with Dan Gagliardo, our candidate for supervisor, and we'd love to have you join us on the campaign trail. So get up here.
I'd love to be there, Bob. And the Amherst connection is real. It's near and dear to my heart. And I will say, just for folks listening, when I grew up in Amherst, it was literally one of the safest towns in America. I think it was recognized or ranked as one of the safest towns.
It did have that designation. Yep.
And now I read about a ring of carjackings going on.
You read correctly.
You just think about how much this state has changed in the last couple of decades. There needs to be accountability for this type of leadership, and it's just been a complete failure, a complete leadership failure at the state level. One party has been in charge for far too long, and we are all bearing those consequences right now. We are bearing the cost of that, and I think this is an inflection point for the state. Yeah,
that's our problem in Amherst. It's been one-party rule for 12 years, and they, frankly, they ignore the voters. Frankly, I think that there's a sense of arrogance amongst them. And, we've got a retired Amherst town policeman running for town board as well. So he knows about those car thefts and those issues of elevated crime levels in Amherst. And we're going to win this year, and, boy, we could use your help. Come on up.
Hey, look, I think we're going to do well not only this year, but I think we're going to do well next year at the state level. So, Karam, we're going to take another break, but we're going to get back and talk more about your platform, about who and what has to be accomplished here in New York. Okay, welcome back. Karam, I want to get your opinion of what's going on this year, and then I want to switch to next year. But Mamdani, what's your opinion there with regard to how can that possibly happen that a socialist or probably a communist Democrat can win that primary and presumably come out to be mayor of the city of New York?
Well, I live in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. The Williamsburg neighborhood, is a neighborhood and a part of Brooklyn where Mamdani did very well. And I actually, I knew a couple of weeks before the primary, or I had a sense that he was going to win. And I told some friends this. And the reason I knew that was, he was the only person that seemed to be running an actual campaign. He was visible. He was out there. He had built a grassroots support, and when I look at the fact that I think he's going to end up winning, I think that he's on track to winning, and I think he ran a good campaign, but he also ran against a bunch of very poor candidates, in my opinion. And I think the takeaway that I have from Mamdani's success is actually that the Democratic Party in the state is completely decimated. The establishment in the state has no talent. They have no direction. The only talent in their party is on the far, far left. And this is a consequence of one-party rule. This is a consequence of them not having competition. Ironically, the wing of the party that doesn't believe in free markets and competition is benefiting from the fact that they actually have to engage in some competition and build support, and they get better quality candidates. So you have the AOCs, the Mamdanis of the world. That is the face of the Democratic Party. That's where the Democrats want to be. They wanted Bernie Sanders. Their party wouldn't let him have it. They wanted Bernie Sanders again, and they wouldn't let him have it. They're trying to do everything they can to not let this be the face of their party. But frankly, to me, it's somewhat refreshing because the mask is off. That is the face of their party. I will take, as a conservative in New York, I think that is the recipe for a common sense center-right ticket to win. Is a state where you have one-party rule that has just gone on for way too long, to the point where the elections are decided in these close primaries. So of course you're going to end up with this constantly just veering further and further to the left, because that's what happens.
Look,
and I think that it's a real opportunity for Republicans at the local level, because you look across all sources. There's basically a Mamdani today. For all of the mayor races, and I think it's going to result in a backlash, because this is not a far less, even though Mamdani had success, remember, this is also less than a year ago, and the biggest swing towards a Republican, towards Trump, than any other swing, than any other state in the country, and President Trump did extremely well in the state, so I don't read it.
Karam, hold on one second. We're having some technical difficulties, so hold on one second. They're trying to correct a little bit.
Well, you know what? We're waiting for Karam on the connect. Hey, Karam, I think you're right. You talk about the Democratic Party, and if Mamdani wins this race, and I believe you're right, I think he's going to win this race. He's going to become the face of the Democratic Party in this nation, and definitely in this state. Think about the leadership of the Democratic Party: Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, New York; Chuck Schumer, Democrat, New York. Now you're going to have Mamdani, AOC, New York. I mean, the Democratic Party is being defined by the left-wing liberal Democrats in New York State. And I think that is absolutely right what you said, that the Republicans next year in this race for governor and in the race for the Attorney General, we have a chance with the conservative Republican ticket to offer a stark contrast to what the Democrats represent and what they've done to this state in the past and what they, God forbid, they could do to us in the future.
Absolutely. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, now we've got you back. And following up with what Bob Davis just said, is Mamdani going to help us or hurt us in the next election? I tend to agree that he is going to help us, because it is going to have such a contrast. So there's going to be such a severe contrast in terms of seeing what a socialistic Democrat, or, in my opinion, a communist Democrat, wants to do versus what I believe the majority of residents in this state want to accomplish.
You know, Ralph, I think, those issues might sell in New York City, and Mondami may very well get elected. But I don't think it's going to sell in upstate New York, and it's definitely not going to sell in Erie County, New York. And that's going to be an advantage for our candidates, not just this year, but next year in those state races for governor and attorney general.
You got to have a percentage of New York City voting our way, and that's why it really is a good thing that Karam is a New York City resident. It's a good thing that, where he comes from. There are a lot of pluses, actually, to his candidacy that I see, because he's going to have the rest of the state. He's going to have the upstate and western New York. You got to have that 20-some% of New York City in order to make this work, right, Karam?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also say, I am very comfortable and used to being around folks that are very liberal. I'm comfortable and used to being around folks that are progressive. I'm a person who is a person of faith. I'm comfortable being in religious communities, comfortable being in a mosque, in a synagogue, in a church, but I'm also, friends with many people who are not as religiously inclined. And in a state like New York, Republicans, unfortunately, we are a third party in the sense that, you have registered Democrats, then blanks, unaffiliated voters, and then registered Republicans.
That's right.
But despite that, we've been punching above our weight. I mean, we've been single digits the last couple of races statewide, and that speaks to our ability to build coalitions. So if you want to win in this state as a Republican, you need to be able to branch out. You need to build a coalition that brings in, I think, the business community, some folks who may be independent, perhaps even folks that are that were Democrats. And I saw that in my time working in tech and in crypto, where folks said, listen, I just saw somebody that I know get debanked because they work in a certain industry that's not politically favored at the moment by the people in charge. I just can't support this, even though I'm a Democrat or even though I'm an independent. And I think being able to take this lawfare message and build a broader coalition is going to be really important.
So what I saw was Lee Zeldin going into New York City, something a lot of Republicans did not do. They were concerned. They didn't want to go into the Democratic strongholds, but Lee did. And someone like you, I think that is a pathway to get these people. Like you say, you have to build the coalition. You have to go in there. It has to be more about the individual than the party. It has to be more about the person than the party. They have to realize that, party politics hasn't helped us. And we need individuals who are strong, who are dedicated, who are willing to commit to public service.
Though, Ralph, I think Democrats have to ask themselves, and get registered Democrats, enrolled Democrats, what is the message of the Democratic Party in New York State right now, especially when you look at guys like Mondami and you look at Letitia James and you look at AOC and Hakeem Jeffries. What is their message? I mean, I think, Trump proved it last year. He was able to move the Working Families Party, Labor, to vote for him, for a Republican candidate. I think the Democrats are lost with their message, and I think they are swinging so far to the left, progressive left. And I think if Mondami does win, that's going to be the face of the Democratic Party. And I say to the Democrats in upstate New York, even downstate, you got to ask yourself, is the Democratic Party that your mom and dad were affiliated with? I don't think the Democratic Party is the party that it was 10 years ago.
So, Karam,
I agree, Bob. And I'll tell you, the message from the Democratic side in New York is just Trump, Trump, Trump. That's all they have to talk about. They want to talk about federal issues. They completely take their own voters for granted and their own communities for granted. I'm somebody who's Muslim. I know that is a community that is, has for a long time voted primarily Democrat, but these are folks that are actually conservatives. The Latino community, the black community in New York, the immigrant communities in New York. These are communities that I think actually, if you make the case to them, these are, at their core, these are conservative-minded folks. And there's an opportunity here when you look at a party that has no message on the Democratic side, that only wants to talk about national issues, to build that broader coalition.
This is Russ Gugino. I'm on the conservative committee with Ralph, and I'll echo what Bob Davis was saying about coming to Western New York. Not only in Amherst are you welcome, but I'm from Hamburg, and there'll be a lot of people from Erie County suburbs as well as the city of Buffalo itself that would love to hear your message. So by all means, come up here and let us know when you're coming, and we'll give you a great welcome. I wanted to ask you real quick about Letitia James. Do you think that if she's convicted of mortgage fraud, that she should be not only resign, but she should be disbarred?
She should resign. I mean, she should resign on the basis of the Trump case that she brought. That was politically motivated. The disbarment and all of that, I'll leave that to the folks that handle all of that. But I just think that all of her her actions in office, in this regard as it relates to lawfare, have just been completely disqualifying.
So look, we only have a couple more minutes, but what I want to know, what I want to hear from you is, what do you believe is your path to becoming the AG candidate? I mean, I'm certainly here to be able to help you, but what do you do from here?
Well, look, New York is a state that has a convention process ahead of the primary. So, right now the most important thing for me is getting around the state, meeting as many folks as possible ahead of that convention, and of course, getting my campaign infrastructure set up. Raising money is going to be very key. This is a huge state. This is almost a state that's like 4 or 5 different states put together, a bunch of different media markets, and you're going up against a party here that is very well funded, well resourced, and so you need to be able to find people that care about your race, that care enough to put resources into your race. And I believe I have a message, just based on my experience, having seen lawfare firsthand, coming from sectors and industry that have experienced this. I think there's a story about the role of the AG office in general and how it's expanded to be kind of like a regulator, even though that's not supposed to be what it does. And there are many other industries and sectors that you can build a kind of broader coalition around. And then you look at New York. I mean, this is late-stage one-party rule. Everybody knows it. There's a complete rejection of the establishment. And so taking that message, having a very clear and concise message that lawfare impacts our bottom line, that it makes the state less affordable. You have to have, I think, a positive vision to give voters. It can't just be, and I, we all know it because we follow this stuff. We're involved. The amount of egregious activity and behavior by the folks in power in the state, you don't even know where to start sometimes because there's so many things that you could talk about, whether it's gerrymandering, whether it's the corruption, the scandals, the lawfare. But most folks in the state, they have to worry about putting food on the table, about paying their bills, about taking care of their families. They don't have time. So you have to make that message and take that message to them. And I think that's going to be very important, having effective communicators in our party, making a proactive case for our platform and really for everybody across the ticket, from the top of the ticket down ballot.
So, look, I'm very happy to have you. We have to take a hard break right now, but look, I think that you're going to do well. I believe with Lise at the top of the ticket, I think we've got a strong chance this year, and a strong candidate like you is going to add substantially to those chances. So I appreciate you being with us. We're going to have you on again. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chairman Lurigo.